Welcome, comrades perennials, to another episode of the audio podcast Synthetic. Artificial intelligence will not replace you, but someone using artificial intelligence definitely will. So imagine you are listening to a deeply moving, highly personal story of addiction. You hear the struggle in the speaker's voice, you feel this profound sense of empathy, and you find yourself fully trusting the message they are sharing.
Now imagine finding out just seconds later that the speaker does not actually exist. The voice is literally just lines of code. It raises the question of whether you still care about the story, or if the underlying message still matters to you once you know the human element is gone.
You find yourself in a fascinating historical moment right now, where that exact scenario is playing out millions of times a day. We are embarking on an exploration to examine the profound ways artificial intelligence interacts with human belief systems, particularly regarding health information and strongly held convictions. The mission of this discussion is to look closely at a phenomenon that is fundamentally reshaping how you acquire knowledge and form opinions.
It is essentially a double-edged sword. On one side, artificial intelligence acts as an unprecedented, highly effective tool for correcting false beliefs and breaking down entrenched conspiracy theories. On the other side, it functions as a highly convincing engine for dangerous medical misinformation that could easily lead someone into a severe health crisis.
The central tension here is how these systems can sound incredibly authoritative and logical, regardless of whether the information they are delivering is perfectly factual or completely fabricated. Before looking at how this technology actually changes our minds, we first need to understand how our perception of the technology changes how we hear the message.
To understand that reception, we can look at a study from JMI AI involving 500 adults in the United States. The researchers wanted to see how the mere knowledge of artificial intelligence being used impacts how people perceive a public health message. Participants were shown a video narrated by what was actually an AI developed using voice-generating software.
The video depicted a narrator telling a personal story about how their addiction to flavored vapes started, how it controlled their life, and it ended with a message promoting a tobacco control policy. The catch here is that the audio and the video were absolutely identical for everyone, but the label given to the participants changed.
Some were told the narrator was an AI, some were told the narrator was a human, others were told it was unknown, and the final group was given no information at all. The study found no significant differences in how people rated the video's overall effectiveness, its credibility, or how much they liked it based on the label they were given.
So the public health message remained entirely persuasive across all groups. It is almost like a placebo effect. If a sugar pill looks like real medicine, our bodies often react as if we've been treated. If a digital voice sounds human, we project a soul onto it, even if it is just algorithms talking.
We project empathy, trustworthiness, and authority onto a speaker purely based on what we think their biological status is, regardless of the actual acoustic qualities of the voice we are hearing. However, the rating of the speaker shifted dramatically. Participants were asked to rate the narrator on characteristics like whether they were bright, competent, genuine, and trustworthy.
When participants were told the narrator was human, the speaker scored a 3.65 out of 5. But when they were told the narrator was AI, that score dropped significantly to a 3.25. The qualitative feedback from the participants illuminates this gap beautifully.
When reading through the open-ended comments, participants in the AI label group repeatedly referred to the voice as monotone, dead, and creepy, despite it being the exact same synthetic audio played to everyone. Those in the human label group described the exact same narration as genuine, vulnerable, authentic, and relatable.
The listeners are projecting their preconceived notions about machines onto the audio. They hear the label AI, and suddenly their brain filters the audio to sound robotic. But the actual warning about vaping still gets through.
This connects deeply to the computers as social actors paradigm. People subconsciously apply social expectations like trust, politeness, and empathy to digital agents. A framework published in AI and Society by the Crazy Alchemist Research Group outlines how the outputs of an artificial intelligence serve as social testimony.
The specific configurations of these systems, such as their interpersonal stance and memory, function similarly to neuromodulatory changes in human cognition. The label literally rewires how our brain assigns weight to a fact in real time. Just knowing it is a machine changes the physical cognitive processing of the evidence.
The brain dynamically adjusts the level of precision and weight assigned to the social evidence being presented. We process the identical information differently based on the social identity we project onto the speaker. We might devalue the emotional warmth of the speaker because we believe it is a machine, yet the underlying factual argument still permeates our cognition.
So if these systems can bypass our emotional defenses just by mimicking a human voice and still deliver a persuasive message, even when we know they are machines, we have to look at what happens when we aim this technology at a belief someone has held on to for years. We are talking about deeply entrenched false beliefs.
There is a massive study conducted by researchers at Cornell, MIT, and American University, published in Science, that tested exactly this. Nearly 1,000 participants engaged in a conversation with a large language model. The participants were asked to describe a conspiracy theory they strongly believed in, like beliefs about staged moon landings.
They rated their confidence in this conspiracy on a scale of 0 to 100. Then they entered an 8.4-minute, two-round conversation with the system, which was instructed to deliver personalized, evidence-based counterarguments. I have to play the skeptic here, though, because human experts struggle to talk people out of conspiracy theories after years of patient dialogue.
Human debunking attempts usually result in the person digging their heels in deeper. But the results of this experiment were staggering. There was a 20 percentage point reduction in conspiracy belief on average, with 1 in 4 participants completely disavowing their conspiracy theory afterward.
This reduction was not temporary either. It lasted for at least 2 months during follow-up testing. And just like the tobacco policy video study, the researchers tested telling people they were talking to an AI versus a human expert. The label did not matter at all.
The belief reduction happened equally across the board, even among participants who firmly believed they were interacting with a human being. The language people used to argue their points did not change in structure, but their minds were still fundamentally changed by the interaction.
It is incredible to consider why the machine succeeds in 8 minutes, where human experts fail for decades. We can reference Dr. Philip Schmid's principles on combating science denialism and the psychology of debunking to unpack the mechanics here.
Entrenched beliefs are famously resistant to correction because human debunking attempts are often generic, complete with emotional friction, or simply of low quality. According to motivated reasoning frameworks, humans filter information based on identity and group loyalty.
If a message comes from a source we associate with an opposing group, or if the human debunker shows frustration, we resist updating our beliefs, even if the evidence presented is entirely factual. The system succeeds here because it instantaneously curates vast amounts of specific, high-quality, tailored reasoning.
It directly addresses the exact hyper-specific piece of evidence the user is clinging to. It doesn't get frustrated. It doesn't roll its eyes when someone brings up a fake shadow on a moon landing photograph. It just calmly outputs a perfectly tailored 500-word explanation of lunar lighting conditions.
It does the heavy lifting of evidence synthesis faster than any human could. A human expert with the same amount of knowledge could produce a similar belief reduction, but assembling page-long, highly detailed accounts of counter-evidence in real time, completely devoid of judgment or emotional fatigue, is practically impossible for a person.
By providing calm, precise, and highly personalized factual explanations, the technology bypasses the usual identity-based resistance with sheer logic. It demonstrates that people are actually willing to update their beliefs when presented with undeniably high-quality evidence that directly addresses their specific doubts without threatening their identity.
That brings up a terrifying flip side. If this technology is incredibly persuasive precisely because it sounds calm, logical, and perfectly evidence-based, what happens when the information it confidently delivers is factually wrong? We are trusting a system because of its tone, not its actual knowledge.
A disturbing audit published in BMJ Open puts this danger into sharp focus. Researchers stress-tested 5 popular models: Gemini, DeepSeek, Meta AI, ChatGPT, and Grok. They asked these models 250 medical questions covering cancer, vaccines, stem cells, nutrition, and athletic performance.
The results showed that nearly 50% of the answers were problematic, with 19.6% categorized as highly problematic. Grok was the worst offender, producing problematic responses 58% of the time, and across all the models, they struggled the most with topics like nutrition and athletic performance.
The specific real-world dangers here are alarming. For example, AI overviews incorrectly advise pancreatic cancer patients to avoid high-fat foods. Experts warn this is incredibly dangerous, as patients following this advice might not take in enough calories to tolerate chemotherapy or potentially life-saving surgery.
In another example, the system provided bogus ranges for liver function tests, which could lead people with serious liver disease to wrongly believe they are healthy and skip vital follow-up appointments. It also incorrectly listed a pap smear as a test for vaginal cancer, which could result in a woman dismissing genuine dangerous symptoms because she recently had a clear cervical screening.
Out of 250 questions, there were only 2 instances where a model refused to answer. Everything else was delivered with absolute, unwavering certainty. The underlying mechanics of these errors explain why this happens. Language models do not know things in the human sense of the word.
They do not possess a medical degree or an understanding of human biology. They predict statistically likely words based on their training data. That training data is a massive, unfiltered mixture of peer-reviewed scientific literature, forum threads, wellness blogs, and social media arguments.
Because they do not weigh evidence or make value judgments, they cannot distinguish between a medically sound protocol and a popular but dangerous internet myth. They are generating the most probable sequence of words, which often results in something that sounds highly plausible but is clinically disastrous.
It is essentially the world's most sophisticated autocomplete. And because it mimics the structure of an authoritative text so well, we fall for it. What makes this particularly hazardous is the illusion of proof.
In the BMJ Open audit, the researchers specifically asked the chatbots for scientific references to back up their medical claims. The median completeness score for these citations was just 40%. The models routinely provided wrong authors, broken links, and entirely fabricated papers.
Yet because the text is formatted perfectly, often utilizing bullet points, bold text, and neat citation lists, and the readability scores are graded as difficult, equivalent to a college sophomore to senior reading level, the user is lulled into a false sense of security.
A lay reader sees a neatly formatted citation list, reads a fluent, highly articulate paragraph, and has absolutely no structural reason to doubt the content. This creates a dangerous scenario where users mistake synthetic confidence for actual medical authority.
This is crucial if you have ever typed your symptoms into a search bar at 2 a.m. The ultimate issue isn't just the machine's accuracy, it is how human beings interact with this technology in moments of extreme vulnerability. People turn to these systems in moments of crisis, searching for answers about frightening diagnoses or mysterious symptoms.
A study published in Nature Medicine reveals a startling gap in this dynamic. The researchers found that while the systems themselves could independently arrive at the correct medical answer 95% of the time when tested in isolation, real people using those same tools only arrived at the correct answer 35% of the time.
The bottleneck is not necessarily the machine. The bottleneck is the human interface. When a person inputs a vague question or a slightly off-base prompt, the system obediently follows that lead. It generates a highly persuasive but medically incorrect response, tailored to the user's flawed premise.
The user, lacking the medical training to spot the hallucination, accepts the output as fact. We can expand on this human bottleneck using a study published in JAMA Network Open. Researchers tested 21 leading models on their ability to diagnose medical conditions.
When the models were given only basic patient details like age, sex, and a vague list of symptoms, they failed to suggest the right diagnosis more than 80% of the time. Because saying my stomach hurts and I am tired could be anything from a mild virus to something life-threatening.
The machine doesn't have eyes to see if the patient is pale, or hands to feel if the abdomen is rigid. It only has the statistical probability of the words typed into the prompt box. When the researchers fed the models hard, objective data like specific exam findings and comprehensive lab results, their diagnostic accuracy soared above 90%.
The takeaway for you, the user navigating this landscape, is incredibly clear. This technology is a powerful processor of structured data, but it is a terrible standalone doctor. It requires hard, factual inputs and rigorous human critical thinking to function safely.
Without a foundation of objective data, the system simply follows the statistical probabilities of its training, navigating the dangerous gap between a statistically likely sentence and a medically safe reality. It cannot contextualize your unique medical history beyond what you type, and it cannot evaluate the real-world consequences of its own perfectly formatted advice.
We are entering a bizarre era where an algorithm can talk us out of a deeply held conspiracy theory in 8 minutes, using flawless personalized logic, but might also confidently advise us into a severe medical emergency using hallucinated citations and dangerous dietary recommendations. The exact same mechanism, the calm, tireless synthesis of convincing text, is responsible for both the miracle and the danger. As these systems become more integrated into our daily search for answers, perhaps the most vital survival skill of the future isn't simply learning how to engineer the perfect prompt. The real challenge for you will be developing the psychological immunity to resist perfectly formatted, highly personalized, yet entirely synthetic confidence.
Subscribe to the podcast series Nuclear Locomotive, Neural Sawdust, and Synthetic. Namaste, thank you, and good luck.